Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
We are. Mike and Mike, it might be the busiest juncture of the sports year that I can remember in an awfully long time. I opened up the show by saying we've got thrilling football finishes. We have 4 baseball games today. We have a lineman looking to fight fans. We have a coach videotaping the last thing in the world you'd think he'd ever want you to see. And we have the vice president taking it up a notch in all this business about the anthem. All that and more is in the hopper. Of them, the only thing we haven't gotten to in these first 2 hours is Donald Penn. So I'm not sure that everyone has seen that video. But after the game, the Raiders are playing badly. They play yesterday without their quarterback. Yep. They're at home. And the fans, as he's leaving, as a lot of the players are driving out of the parking lot, a lot of the fans, I've seen the video, are yelling all sorts of curses at him. He says that someone threw a bottle at his car. That is being disputed in some places. I obviously do not know. I don't know whether it happened or not, but he does, and it's on video. He does get out of the car and walk over, and confront is sort of a strong word. He says some things, and a security guard is there, and a cop comes over there, and all the rest of that. And the only thing I thought of was the story that you once told me about the time that a fan was berating one of your teammates. Yeah, no, that was in stadium, though. Right. That wasn't in the parking lot after a game. Quickly, our punt returner was having a tough time. This was at home, too, in Philly. Was having a tough time and made another mistake and was sitting on the stand on the bench. And the first row is probably 20 yards behind the bench, 15 yards. And I was over there telling him, hey, we need you later in the game, just trying to pick him up. And there was some young kid and his girlfriend there, but it was the kid, probably in his 20s, just calling this punt returner everything in the book. I mean, really crossing the line as far as I was concerned. And it's a bad moment for that guy, and it just got the best of me. And I basically looked at the guy and said, shut up, or something along those lines. I'm sure it was a little more spicier than that. And then he kept ripping on the guy and ripping on me, but mostly on the punt returner. So I started walking toward the guy. I was going to get to him. At that point, I was just completely, enraged by the guy. And a cop stepped right in front of me, looked me square in the eye and said, just turn around. I'll take care of it. It's not worth it. And I blinked and was like, yeah, you're right. This would have been a really dumb thing to do. So I turned around and just ignored the guy. But this is in the parking lot after a game. Was a bottle thrown at the car? I mean, that's a completely different circumstance of, you're taught just to let things go. You're really taught as a player. You're not taught. It's just kind of known. Don't let them think they're getting to you or they're going to come at you even harder. That's mostly for away fans. This is a home fan, though, that I was going after. So it's a tough situation. But you know what? You get amped up. You get emotional. These guys just played a bad game. Your own fans are ripping on you. You're supposedly leaving. You're leaving there in a couple of years. I mean, it all kind of adds up to a very emotional situation. So that was the scene after the game in Oakland. The scene during the game was not so pretty either for the home team. Raiders, we had heard reports that Derek Carr wanted to play, and then ultimately they didn't let him play, and they didn't get almost anything going there at all. That's great news, by the way. That's great news that he was out throwing the ball as early as he was. So, right. I mean, that's big for two of the teams I picked to win that division don't have their quarterbacks. I mean, Tennessee with Mariota out, Oakland with Derek Carr out. It's very, very difficult. Yeah. So, and then in that division, so let's just make a quick run around the league because there's been so much stuff today. Let's try and just do some of the games themselves, Mike. Let me get a quick take from you on each of these. Yeah. Kansas City just continues to prove they're not just the only unbeaten team in the sport. They're the best team in football right now, the way they're playing. Yeah, and again, don't let that score. That was a blowout last night. Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns, but a couple were, one was with 3 minutes ago, the other was when the clock was running out when they were out of it. So between Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill with the punt return, I mean, once he gets in the open field, it is over. Travis Kelce could be an issue there. He has a concussion, so we'll see how long that may keep him out. They had the right side of their center was out and the right guard was out last night. They still get the win, but those are things you need to keep an eye on with injuries and just how long they're going to last before you have your guys in there. But and I do believe it. Alex Smith, how much is he getting pushed from the fact that they have basically picked his successor? Just what happened to him in San Francisco is happening to him in Kansas City. They've picked his successor, and now he is playing the best he's played in his career, basically saying, hold on,
I got a little bit left in the tank here, gang.
Yeah, and it's a different circumstance because when in San Francisco, when they drafted Colin Kaepernick, they didn't do it in the first round.
Right,
it wasn't
completely the same. You're right.
That. In this case, they traded up to take Patrick Mahomes in the first round. So that's as loud a statement as
Without
you can make about the future of your franchise. And so there he is playing MVP caliber football. It's him and Aaron Rodgers again. I saw Shefty was tweeting about it, and we were talking about it earlier this morning. They were drafted the same year, and here they go. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance, creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options. Pick the price that works for you. Another game we haven't done practically anything on this morning is the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger throwing 5 interceptions yesterday on a day where they appeared to be kind of force-feeding the ball to Antonio Brown.
Oh, yeah.
We saw what happened last week where he turns over the Gatorade thing, and, they were critical of him outwardly, Ben among others, and were they forcing it to him? They targeted him about 406 times yesterday. Several of those were picked. And before your comment, I want you to hear Ryan Clark, because obviously RC was there in Pittsburgh for years and years. He knows that team and the inner workings of it, and he's going to point out a few things that I think are pretty enlightening. Here was Ryan Clark on what's going on right now with the Steelers.
So it's this team in this city that's about work, and it's about hard work, and it's about family, and it's about being quiet and going about your business. It's been extremely noisy in Pittsburgh this year. Like you said, whether it's Le'Veon Bell or Martavius coming back, or why can't we get a running game going early, the anthem, Antonio, now Ben. There's always something going on other than focusing on being the best football team we can possibly be. We come into this season expecting highlight reels every weekend from this offense. The killer bees and all of these different people, this offensive line that they put a lot of money into, but they haven't been focusing on football. Every week, Coach Tomlin's having to give a soliloquy about how we're going to change things, what's going to be different, not about just playing football the Pittsburgh Steelers way.
That's a really great point. I mean, for a blue-collar town and the way we know the Steelers, I mean, the way they play the game, you get Le'Veon Bell, how he was tweeting and stuff before he came back. Antonio Brown, we know. Now with Ben, every year you're going to get the question of whether he's going to continue to play or not, right? I'm going to retire. I'm thinking about retiring. I'm not sure. Have I lost it now after this game? Yeah, it seems a bit dysfunctional in Pittsburgh right now for a team that we keep saying on paper they have so much talent out there. But just a bad game. Ben, one ball was tipped at the line. Another, Antonio Brown did have 10 catches, but 3 going to him also were intercepted. One was high off his hand and a defender that got picked, and the others were bad throws by Ben. Just bad throws. And Jacksonville, we've talked about this defense. You want to talk about a Jekyll and Hyde team, right? Where they play more like, wow, look at them, and then they'll play really bad, and then they'll play really well. But one thing is for sure, that defense is fantastic. And you go through the sheet of how they built it with free agents and drafts. They put their time and money into it, and it is going to pay off for them. I still believe Blake Bortles won't be the quarterback there next year. They're going to have to look in another direction. Leonard Fournette, I know, capped it for you. He had a good game that turned into a great-looking statistical game with a 90-yard run at the end of the game. But how about in that play when he broke outside and called on the defender to hit him?
Looking for a hit.
He's a load, so that's a team you're like, yeah, okay. But Pittsburgh, I am a little surprised at, I think, Ryan Clark, the word that I was looking at out of him saying is a little bit of dysfunction going on there.
Yeah, I mean, noisy is exactly the right way to describe it. A lot of things. And look, we've talked about the situations involving the national anthem around the NFL all year long, and the discord that it has caused throughout the country. In most places, it did not appear that it was creating disharmony within the teams. Pittsburgh seemed to be the one place that it sort of did.
Yeah.
And you'll never really know. I don't think that we'll ever really know whether that is impacting them or not. But that's deeply personal stuff.
Yes, you're right.
Might be creating a problem. They just don't look right. Like you watch them
play,
they just don't look right.
I agree. They look out of sorts.
I can't sit here and tell you that's the reason, but that's every other team. I mean, the fans and the president and everyone else has their own perspective on it. But every other team seems to have pretty much handled it within their own house in a way they were comfortable with, at least outwardly.
No, I know what you're saying.
They seem to have had a problem.
They've definitely have had a problem. Now, is it affecting the play on the field? That's something we don't know. Right. We're not in that locker room. But to your point, it does seem to have affected them more than others.
All right, and then one more thing quickly, and then we'll get Marcus Spears in here because we haven't gone through any of the college games from the weekend, but there were 2 huge defeats. 2 big-time teams losing games at home to unranked opponents, which were huge. So we'll get Marcus Spears in here in a second. But again, what's trending now, what everyone is talking about is this Chris Forster. So he's the Miami Dolphins offensive line coach. And I'm just going to give you basically the layman's version of what happened here. This is not a videotape that was taken of him surreptitiously.
No.
He is clearly videotaping himself speaking to a woman in extremely suggestive and at times lewd and vulgar language, while snorting lines of white powder off a table. I'm being instructed not to call it cocaine. It's very difficult to picture that it's anything else, but in the interest of total fairness, he's at minimum snorting white powder off of a table.
Yeah.
The Dolphins say they were taken aback by it and are just finding out what's going on. He has refused comment. It is one of the most startling things we've seen happen within a football team or within the world of sports, and as long as I can remember.
Just stunning. And as Jeff Saturday was just here said, he was an assistant coach on Jeff's team for a little bit as well. He's been with 8 different teams. I think it's his second stint with the Dolphins. So this is just stunning. I mean, stunning again, because he's filming it. He's saying things to try and impress this woman. It blows my mind. And then she posted it. You know, she ended up posting it on her Facebook page. So, listen, I mean, I just when you think you've seen it all, we've been doing this 18 years, and many times we've come in and say, man, haven't seen this before. Can it get any wilder than this? Well, here we go again. I mean, I can't even begin to know where to go with this other than the guy is obviously going to be out of a job. I think to me, there's no question about that. If it is him, in fact, and he is snorting what we think he's snorting, I don't think there's going to be any question about that, but just unreal that he taped himself doing this.
This is something they also can't let linger. I mean, the Dolphins have to find out what's going on with this, and they have to do something about it immediately, because it is certainly going to be what everyone is talking about otherwise. Okay, Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now we shift gears again. Let's go on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line to our friend Marcus Spears, who does terrific work analyzing college football on the SEC Network. He is the co-host of Thinking Out Loud on the SEC Network that airs Monday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and he's all over our coverage coming off of what was an interesting weekend with 2 surprising results. Marcus Spears, good morning. How are you today?
Greeny Golick, what's up, brothers? Hey, listen, I'm looking at the show this morning, and I'm saying to myself, they never know what they going to have to talk about Monday morning, and this is one of those mornings.
It most certainly,
and it really
if you had told me we were going to have an NFL offensive line coach snorting white powder on videotape and releasing that, essentially putting it out to the world himself by sending it to someone else, I would have told you, no, I'll take the under on that. But one way or another. All right, let's get to it here, because we got huge results this weekend. The Oklahoma defeat, let's start with that. They're a 30-point favorite at home against Iowa State, and they lose. How stunning, to put that in context of how stunning it is and what you think it overall does for them and for the Big 12.
I think it's very stunning. But we had this conversation about Oklahoma and whether this defense was really good enough to be a top 4 team in the country. And I think it came to a head. We got excited about Baker Mayfield and this offense and what they were able to do. But if you look at it, Baylor put up a lot of points on Oklahoma the week before. And now you got Iowa State, who plays tough in the Big 12 all the time, getting this win. So it muddies it up. Oklahoma was the one team left, now maybe TCU, with the hope of the Big 12 getting into the college football playoff. And now when you look at the situation coming into this week, everybody in the Big 12 is on red alert except TCU. And TCU can be beat by Oklahoma. They can be beat by a couple other teams in the Big 12. So you just never – now it's so muddied up that you don't really know who the team is that's going to come out of the Big 12 at the end of the year to give them a chance to be in the playoff.
TCU, that undefeated team now, November 11th is when they play at Oklahoma. So a lot of people looking at that one. Can another team like an Oklahoma and Oklahoma State get back into this thing? But obviously TCU's going to have to lose. And then Michigan State and Michigan in a game for the second half and into the second half, the torrential downpour that happened. It was one of those, and they called it. You could see that they were showing it before the game. The wall that was moving in, that whoever was leading when that came in was probably going to win, and it turned out to be Michigan State. What does this do for Michigan? It looks like Spate, their starting quarterback, who hasn't played in a bit, is going to be out for the season, so O'Korn is going to be the guy. What do you see with them moving forward?
They got to stop turning the ball over, Green. I mean, Goldie, that's what it really boils down to. They have to take care of the football, and I know they talk about the weather. You go back to the first game of the season, when Spate was in. They threw 2 interceptions to Florida, the first game of the season, that almost let Florida back into that game and have a chance to win it. So that is really what it's boiling down to for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan, taking care of the football. The defense is good enough to get these guys to where they want to be at season's end. But if you continue to put these guys in a bad predicament, I'm going to tell you, as a defensive player, when you see it happening and you know that you have a good enough unit to kind of keep your team relevant and keep us in games in every game that we play, and the offense continues to turn the football over and give other teams chances, it begins to get frustrating. So you would hope that within the makeup of Michigan right now, that all of these guys are talking and they're trying to get things fixed from an offensive standpoint. But as it stands, you know, we talk about Harbaugh being 1-4 against rivalry games, and we talk about all of the things that has taken place at Michigan. They play really good football. We got to still think about where this program was before Jim Harbaugh took over. And they still have an opportunity to continue to win and maybe get back in the conversation, because I think the Ohio State game is still looming, and it's still going to be something that everybody's going to have an eye on. Penn State is still there as well. So they have enough strength in that conference to make a run again and for them to have a strong enough statement at the end of the season to get into the top 4. But as of right now, they just got to take care of the football, man.
Mike and Marcus Spears, it was pointed out after those 2 games that each of the 3 national champions in this era with the college football playoff have lost a game at home during the season. So these 2 teams lose a game at home. We immediately write them off. And as Marcus is pointing out, they may not end up that way. And did you guys see what Trevor Maddich tweeted after those games? It really made me laugh out loud. We're talking about Oklahoma's struggles on defense and Michigan's struggles on offense. He tweeted, if Oklahoma's defense and Michigan's offense were on the same team, Kent State would schedule them for homecoming. I thought it was
pretty good.
Actually, a pretty good line. All right, Marcus, should we just package up the Heisman Trophy and send it to Saquon Barkley right now, or is that still up for grabs?
It's Saquon's right now. And when you look at what he's doing, look, this is the thing, all right? We know that this is a quarterback award. Whenever that guy establishes himself as the best player, or he has these performances, or does something that raises everybody's eyebrows. Go back to Lamar Jackson last year. There were games where you just said, all right, he plays the right position. That was a dynamic performance. This dude is special. Saquon Barkley is the best player in college football this year. He's proven it. He's affecting the game even when he doesn't have the ball. And you talk about athleticism, you talk about leadership, you talk about the right mentality. All the voters look at now, because of the Reggie Bush situation, the Johnny Manziel situation. All of these voters, all of these Heisman voters look at the makeup and the character of these players as well. And I think that's going to help him as far as the season goes along. He's going to continue to perform. Trace McSorley is good enough at quarterback to make sure that Saquon doesn't have all of these boxes, with 8 and 9-man boxes trying to defend against him. They get him involved in the pass game. So when you look at a complete player, it's Saquon Barkley. When you look at a guy that affects the game more than anybody else in college football right now, it's Saquon Barkley. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't end up being the Heisman favorite now and winning the trophy if they can continue to have a successful season at Penn State. And not to mention if they continue to win and have a chance to get in the playoff.
All right, Marcus, we all know Alabama, Clemson. A lot of people think they're going to go undefeated, 1-2 in the country. I've said this already about the SEC title game. Now I'll say it about the ACC title game. Better chance happening. Alabama, Georgia meet in the SEC title game undefeated. Clemson, Miami meet in the ACC title game undefeated.
I think it's a better chance that you. That's a great question, Goldie. I think it's a better chance you get Clemson and Miami undefeated. And when you look at, meeting in the championship game, when you look at the SEC, man, the physical grind, I get concerned about these teams. Week 5, 6, 7, and you going forward, the line of scrimmage, you lose important guys, man. We just had a couple guys get injured this week. Natrez Patrick from Georgia, the linebacker, was suspended for marijuana. All of these type of things happen. So the physical part of it, losing players, who's instrumental to what's going on. We saw Luke Del Rio go out for Florida. They had to play with Felipe Franks. That didn't give them enough offense to beat LSU. Alabama still has to play Auburn, who I think is getting better and better every single week. They're physical at the line of scrimmage. That'll be a great matchup after seeing what Texas A&M was able to garner. Even though Alabama had the game in hand, plays are there to be made. And then when you look on Georgia's side, I think Georgia has the best path to go undefeated, but they have to play Auburn. Auburn is the fly in the ointment for both of the teams in the SEC right now because they continue to get better. They're playing defense at an elite right now, elite status. So if Jarrett Stidham and that offense can continue to progress, that's a real valuable reason why Georgia or Alabama wouldn't be undefeated going to the SEC championship. And if they beat Alabama, obviously, and have the rest of the season like it's trending right now for Auburn, they could end up playing in Atlanta. It'll be interesting come down to the end.
Our SEC Network analyst Marcus Spears, co-host of Thinking Out Loud on the SEC Network, which airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's with Greg McElroy. And I've noticed on your table there, you guys have a few bobbleheads. We have some extra bobbleheads. Our show's ending. If you'd like us to send a few your way.
Hey, send us everything. First of all, I don't know why it took so long for you guys to give me a shout, all right? I've been big fans, love both of you guys. I know y'all going off to do y'all own thing, man, but I'm let y'all know it's a privilege to be on Mike and Mike. Now I can pretty much say I'm the man, fellas.
We
Thanks,
agree.
Marcus,
Marcus, thank you very much, and we enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Take care. Marcus Spears with us. Take care, Marcus.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT. Home. Safe home.
All right, Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Shell Pinzo Performance Line. Always a delight to bring Chris Mortensen into our studio. And we've never needed you more than we need you right now, because this is the craziest morning I can remember in the NFL in a long time.
No, I was reading Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback today, and in his first 3 or 4 fat paragraphs, there's a summation of what you would say is really kind of one of those punch-in-the-gut type weekends. I mean, there were the heights and lows that you have with a normal NFL weekend, but for some reason this weekend was uniquely great, uniquely sad, and uniquely weird.
Let's start with the weird. This story with the Miami Dolphins offensive line coach. Again, his name is Chris Forster. Yeah. I know that you have tried to reach out and done some of the reporting on this. What have you been able to find out?
Well, just to go through it. I mean, listen, we're like everybody else, we're watching the Chiefs and Texans games, and we're trying to catch up with the injuries to J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless, who's a heck of a player, by the way.
Yes, he is.
And then, Adam Schefter and I, we're in the same hotel, and we're almost like a floor above or floor below each other every Sunday, and we're texting each other or talking to each other as we're going through a list of things that are happening and unfolding. In this case, J.J. Watt's unfolding. But then all of a sudden, this video is posted on Facebook of Chris Forster, who is the Dolphins offensive line coach. So first thing you do is that him? Well, you look at it, and it's like instantly, yes, that is him. But somebody, you'll make sure we get verification somewhere else, but that's him. And you see his goatee is the gray speckled in it, so it feels it's recent. And then trying to immediately reach him, and I'll say I called him. He answered the phone. Hello, it's his voice. And then I identify myself, and he hangs up. So, it tells me his caller ID wasn't working. I didn't put it on no caller ID.
Right.
So I didn't get a comment, but he hung up, and then there has been verification as him. The Dolphins have issued their statement that they're looking into it. And in cases like this, you don't expect the guy to be on the field again with them this year. Will he be fired? Listen, if he has a problem, a substance abuse problem, he's treated like any other employee,
right?
Which is, you need to go get help before we even talk about the work. And so, in summation of a weird event that happened close to, between 11 and midnight Eastern time last night, that was the weird part of it.
So, I mean, from the fired standpoint, I get it. If a player walks in and said, "I need help," before they test positive, they could be protected a bit.
Right.
If this video is out, could the Dolphins fire him and say, "Listen, you say you want help, we'll help you, but this video, we had no idea you needed help." So, do you expect him to have the job with the Dolphins?
I would say that, actually, I don't know the specific rules and guidelines. They have contracts too, by the way. But I would suspect that they certainly have the right to dismiss him, for cause. But then the whole process of you're an employee, you want to help the guy, and my gut instinct, you would hope, is that yes, we want to help the guy, but doesn't mean you get to come back and coach with this football team anymore, and certainly not this year as we see it. We'll wait to hear it unfolds today. They'll have a statement, I'm sure, and maybe even Chris will have a statement.
All right, so that's the weird part of it. The sad part of it, which is the much more commonplace part, unfortunately, in the NFL, is several really high-profile players suffering bad injuries. Let's start with Odell Beckham. We know he's done for the year. The questions then become about his long-term future. We know the situation he's in contractually. We know how ridiculously talented and productive he has been. What is it, at this point we may just be guessing, but what is your expectation of where it all goes for him and for the Giants now contractually?
Well, I think he is going to be a Giant, whether it's going to be under a different circumstance than certainly he envisioned, which is, I'm going to get a contract that makes me the highest paid player in football, but we also know that means the highest paid non-quarterback in football. And he was going to get that, despite irritating, ownership with the dog thing in the first week, or whenever it was. He's going to be with the Giants. I think there's going to be some hesitation about giving him that huge contract. However, if you think he's going to heal properly and still be the player he is, then I would think that the big contract is still possible, but less of a lock than it was going into that week. By the way, just to speak on the bigger injuries, and you played this, sometimes we don't appreciate what these guys put themselves out there for, and fans will say, well, they get paid a lot of money and all that stuff. And, they're humans and their families, and people are emotionally connected. But I've always said, and in the case of J.J. Watt, which we'll get to, he says this morning on Twitter, I am devastated, which tells you pretty much the big picture.
Yep.
It's bad for the player, it's bad for the team, but it's bad for the NFL. We just lost, two of the faces of the league, and J.J. Watt and Odell Beckham Jr. That's bad for the league.
And again, overall, for a Houston defense, Whitney Merciless goes out with a pectoral muscle tear. Between he and Watt since 2012 have 109 sacks, most of any duo on any team. Yeah. With Watt, is there going to be major concern that he may never be the player he is again, coming off the couple surgeries on the back, and now I agree with your statement of what that says about this injury right now that may keep him out the rest of the year?
Yeah, I guess it could. He's always one of those guys you say, well, if anybody can, J.J. Watt can. But, listen, your back surgery, some people will even suggest that as good as he was playing, he still hadn't reached that Defensive Player of the Year, plateau. Right. Status that he had. But those things normally take time. We're only in the first, at the end of the first month of the season, basically. So, who knows? But he's certainly going to be a Texan. There's no question about it. And, recover.
Money's not the issue.
But this is a team that we said, especially now with the emergence of Deshaun Watson, that really should contend. I know they lost to the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are the best team in football right now, and that to me is like that's another part of this deal is we're losing a couple of great players off one of the best teams in the league.
That whole division is kind of hard to figure.
Really
Tennessee,
is.
obviously, without Mariota right now. Jacksonville, there have been several weeks this season where they look like the best team in the sport, and then against the Jets, they looked like anything but, and they lost another bad game to the Titans as well.
We now don't know what the Jets are, which is
Which is what?
A
exactly?
Premium team.
What are they? What are they?
Hey, it's just tanking. It just goes to prove, by the way, this tanking concept is to the guys in the locker room, to the coaches, the guys who put in all the time to work. There is no such thing as tanking. But here's the thing about Jacksonville. This is the imprint and stamp and the culture that they wanted to create, not just with Tom Coughlin, who's now the vice president of football operations, but with Doug Marrone, who is just like joined at the hip there in terms of that philosophy. And that's what you see, along with the talent that has been put together by Dave Caldwell, who's the general manager. So it's a collaborative effort, but you can't go with Blake Bortles not winning a game for you, although he's won one, we've seen. But they're a pretty good football team.
But by the time they get to be whatever it is they want to be, and they're a good team.
Blake Bortles won't be.
He won't be. That's what I'm asking you.
No. In my opinion.
Well, let me ask you this real quick,
Yeah.
because I've stated this with the emergence of Deshaun Watson, and I think it's real. He won't have perfect games every week, but a lot of teams passed on Deshaun Watson before, including Cleveland traded out 12. We've talked about that. But Jacksonville was a team at 4 with questions about Bortles, but they wanted to create this physicality. And I can tell you Watson was a serious consideration for them at 4. They went with Leonard Fournette, and it looks great right now for what they're trying to create there. But, you just wonder if 3 years down the line we'll be second-guessing them too. But there's a lot of other teams to second-guess if Watson continues along this path.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns at this point have bypassed in the last 2 years Jared Goff and Carson Wentz
not
Deshaun
Goff.
Watson.
Because the Rams had flipped into the 1 spot. Okay.
So I guess they wouldn't have been able to.
But they did pass on Wentz.
Okay.
And that was like 50, the league was split 50-50 who was going to be the better.
Fair enough. Wentz or Goff, and based upon the time that they did
That's right.
And then now on Deshaun Watson and others. So we'll see what one. And yesterday they benched Deshaun Kaiser at halftime.
Yes, they did.
So we'll see. Mort is here. Stays with us on the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. There's one NFL team that has been the rock of stability, basically more than any other for decades, that right now feels like they're in a little bit of turmoil.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Off the top of the hour, you will hear what Buster Olney said earlier this morning on our show that has everybody talking about Joe Girardi and his future as the manager of the Yankees. But right now we're talking football with Chris Mortensen. And Mort, there is no organization I can think of in sports that is more a model of stability than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had 3 head coaches since the late 1960s, which is incredible when you think about it. But Ryan Clark was making the point that this year, in a variety of different ways, there's been a lot of noise around the Steelers, a team that you don't traditionally see with that, and they're just not playing well. And Ben got intercepted 5 times yesterday, and you can't help but wonder if those two things aren't related to each other. All of this, little bits of controversy around that team and the fact that they're not playing well.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, listen, you're talking about Antonio Brown and the antics of last week. You're talking about Ben Roethlisberger calling him out. You're talking about Le'Veon Bell's lengthy, not a contract holdout because he didn't have a contract, but wisdom would have said you got to report 2 weeks before that to get into football shape, and he got off to a slow start. But something I said on Sunday NFL Countdown yesterday, this has been festering since last year during the course of the year. The tension there, even between Roethlisberger and Brown. They can deny it all they want, but I know it's true. And then this offseason, when Ben started talking about retirement or suggesting it and then actually talking about it, and some of his concerns are about his health, Chuck Noll, the great, late Hall of Fame coach there, he was one of the guys who originally said, hey, if you talk about retirement, you are retired. And so I'd have people actually question whether Ben is totally 100% locked into football. And they didn't think so. And then this Antonio Brown thing, when they gave him the big money, $17 million a year in February, concerns from management up to Art Rooney the second, the team president and owner, about the maturity of Antonio Brown. But you had to pay him. He's arguably the best receiver in football, one of the top 3, you would say. And they had to give it to him. But still, that underlying tension between quarterback, receiver, the Le'Veon Bell situation, and you look at Mike Tomlin and you say, well, there's a Coach, when he appears before a microphone, he'll take care of it. Well, something's not connecting, and you guys earlier on the show, I heard you talked about maybe the issue with the anthem and the Alejandro Villanueva moment when he stood outside the tunnel of that game against Washington. It could be all of those things, but it's been festering longer than just the past couple of weeks.
And there doesn't seem to be. I don't know if this is something that that closed door team meeting is going to fix anytime soon.
Hey, listen, this thing about Ben, and it could just be physically he's starting to decline because of all the hits and some of the things. His arm doesn't look as live, as certainly not as athletic as he used to be. But you have to be, as a quarterback, so focused, locked in. I mean, we just saw Peyton Manning honored, guys like that. Look at Tom Brady, all those, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you have to be so locked in. And Ben Sad is also a future Hall of Famer, but it's not there. It looks like the guy is not locked in, and I think that's affecting the team.
They're 3-2 right now, tied with the Ravens atop that division. The Bengals have played their way back into it also with a couple of wins, and then Mort, of course. New wrinkles, it seems like almost daily and certainly weekly with the situation with the protests and the national anthem and everything else. And the latest, maybe the biggest story yesterday, is Jerry Jones coming flat out and saying after the game, no player on this team will, I think the word he used was disrespect the flag. And if they do, they will not play. That's the strongest stand that we have heard any owner thus far in the National Football League take.
By far, take it publicly. And for Jerry, okay, I'll give him credit for standing up and saying it publicly as opposed to somebody else, owners behind the scenes, talking about it. Here, what is disrespecting the flag? So obviously, in Jerry's mind, anything, taking a knee or whatever. No, but they had a couple players raise their fist during the anthem. Is that disrespect?
And he said he wasn't aware of that. I think was his quote.
Here's the thing about it. This is not going to happen. But what would happen if Dak Prescott, Des Bryant, and Ezekiel Elliott all decided to take a knee? You telling me they're not playing? And you know what? Jerry, man of his word, may say, no, you're not playing, and no matter what happens. But the NFL, there's nothing in the collective bargaining agreement that I know of that would prevent an owner from setting some of his own policies on how they expect him to act. However, it's not an NFL rule that the players have to stand for the anthem. And we've discussed before that really in 2009 was the point where we actually started bringing players out in the field for the national anthem for various reasons, including the fact that broadcast networks just wanted to kick off the game as quickly as possible to stay on schedule.
So real quickly here, when guys like you, and you'll be, I'm sure, calling owners saying, are you going to have this rule as well? Do you think owners will start publicly saying they're going to have this rule or no?
I say no. I don't think so because I think there's a lot of conversation probably going on within the league and the league office, and they've already had one. They had huge meetings a week ago about this. So I would say not a large majority of owners, but obviously more than one has. Yeah. Well, one has publicly stated something.
All right, we'll see if it continues from there because there were stories about that in Miami and other places yesterday. Mort, we so appreciate you coming in here every week.
Thanks,
and
Mort.
Keep us honest on all these emails. There's nothing we look forward to more than getting that email from Mort saying, you got this wrong.
Yeah, no. You got it right.
You're the best. Thank you, Chris. Chris Mortensen with us here. All right, we'll change subjects next on this incredibly busy day. Buster Olney set it off earlier this morning here with his suggestion about what a loss today might mean for the future of the manager of the Yankees. We got some baseball in the hip pocket and a whole lot more as we continue next. Stay there. Mike and Mike.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.